Welcome to the Omnia Sol Art Show, the glitch art video talk show hosted by Omnia Sol. Episode 34. Orange Juice and Hedgehog, Dilemma 1, Cruel Thesis.
Hello, and welcome back to the Omnia Sol Art Show. Just a heads up, this episode is cut into 2 parts. I will try to have the second part uploaded early for the Patreon patrons, but I really hope you enjoy it. I really think this is one of the most interesting interview episodes I've ever done. So yeah, thank you for watching, and here we go. Well, welcome to the Omnia Sol Art Show. Today we've got Samantha from Cathode GayTube on YouTube, and as well as Instagram. And welcome. Today we're talking about Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I'm excited.
I'm also very excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So today we're going to be glitching through one of my circuit benders hooked up to the wave pool, which is like a Raspberry Pi, kind of like a digital delay pedal with a bunch of other effects, but like for video. And we're going to be glitching 2 different Evangelion tapes together. So I'm wondering what kind of, out of the original 26 episodes, what are kind of your 2 favorite, or I guess I should say 4 favorite episodes, since there's 2, each episode has 2 episodes. So if you were to break it into 13 tapes, each tape has 2 episodes. Which 2 tapes do you think you would choose?
Oh, God.
Sorry, that's a lot to put you on the spot.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's such a non-linear story, and I like binge it on Netflix, so it's hard to keep track of which episode is which.
Yeah.
I would say towards the middle of the show, where we start to explore Rei, and we get some of the more interesting imagery. I think the episode is called Rei 2. I think it's like the 3rd or 4th, maybe the 5th episode. I really like that. And then the one of the later episodes where the angel, oh gosh, I don't remember what its name is fighting with Asuka, and she gets her ass kicked. And then Rei has to explode it, and she also gets her ass kicked. I really enjoy that. I really appreciate the use of light in the really dynamic fight scenes is really cool. And the really bright colors is a really nice contrast to the more industrial and gloomy look of Tokyo 3 and the Central Dogma and stuff like that.
Definitely. So I've got Rei 2 written down, and then we'll try to figure out what the other episode is. And I can try to glitch those for the show as well.
Cool.
Yeah, how did you get it? When did you first watch Neon Genesis?
I had a friend in high school who was fucking... Oh, sorry, can I swear?
Yeah, you can swear as much as you want. It's just going on YouTube, so...
Oh, great, yeah. So I had a friend who was a total weeaboo, and they introduced me to a couple different animes that I enjoyed, and we were watching Sailor Moon, and then we switched to Evangelion, and I couldn't make it through the first episode, honestly, the first time, because I was very sensitive to graphic violence. But I found it fascinating, and I told myself that when I stopped being such a baby, I would return to it. So, about a year ago, I found myself spending a lot of time inside, and so I decided to get really invested and become a scholar of Evangelion. And it totally paid off. It's worth the time, definitely. Yeah,
that's actually kind of how I got into it too. I remember I did not know about it in high school. Like I knew about, like I'm 30 now. So like obviously Toonami was a thing. And then like later with like Adult Swim showing certain anime and stuff. But as far as Neon Genesis, it wasn't until I was in college and on Tumblr, and the entire Tumblr left for some reason, all started watching Neon Genesis at the same time. And I remember watching the first episode and like kind of thinking it was cool, but not ready to just like deep dive into it. And yeah, it wasn't until being stuck at home and then with it getting put on Netflix and then everyone talking about just like how Netflix was using a new translation and how like it wasn't the, you know, same different voice actors and cutting out Fly Me to the Moon. It just like it got me interested to like watch both and like really kind of deep dive into like, because it is such a fan favorite, and to see like people get just so upset about, you know, the new translation and different voice actors. I was like, obviously there's like something here.
Sure.
And yeah, loved it. Yeah. And I ended up getting the tapes on eBay and like getting to watch it in its like original glory that way, which was pretty fun, and only lost one tape on a faulty VCR that ate it. So I've only had to replace one tape so far.
Nice.
Out of it.
Yeah. I mean, even,
yeah, and you said you... Oh, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, even just what you said, I already have like 1,000 things to say in response.
Yeah, go for it.
Obviously, I am also a Tumblr leftoid, so the leftist perspective and the leftist reading of Evangelion is really interesting. I was writing down some notes about how Gendo is a fascist and how the nationalization of the power grid for the sake of fighting Ramiel is like a step towards Zile's, globalist agenda or whatever. But also, I mean, I'd never seen the original translation in any like meaningful way. I mean, I saw like half of the first episode with that translation. I kind of prefer the newer voice actors. I do wish we got Fly Me to the Moon because the ending song in the Netflix one sucks. And that motif is in the show and it's like meaningful, and the lyrics are, they lend themselves very well to the relationships between the characters.
And I don't remember on the Netflix one, do they still put the motif in the show or do they cut it out entirely?
I don't know, honestly. There's a lot of music in this show, and some of it is very subtle. I would believe you if you told me that they had to cut it out of the show entirely because of copyright and replace it with something else. But I also never felt like I noticed it, and I never felt like I noticed that there was music missing. So yeah, I'm comfortable with the Netflix version. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I need to rewatch it because I just the video quality is just so spectacular. Getting to watch it in a higher definition too, and I do remember the kind of like motif throughout it of like as the story progresses, you'll have these like moments of pause where like a character is at a vending machine and is just like humming "Fly Me to the Moon."
Oh yeah, totally.
And I know it's funny because it's like a different production company, but with the rebuilds, they put out a soundtrack from the rebuilds, and because the vinyl version came into my store, I should check if someone bought it, because if someone didn't buy it, you bought it?
I have it. The 2021.
The not the 2020, the one for the soundtrack for the rebuilds actually. The soundtrack for the Amazon movies.
Yeah, I think I have that, and I actually was listening. I listen to it on Spotify all the time because it's fucking amazing. And actually,
because I know there was the 2021, but then there was like a smaller one that had like a white cover with just like a drawing of like Shinji on it.
Oh no, I'm not familiar with that one.
But it had another version of "Fly Me to the Moon." That I'm trying to remember the artist's name. I'll probably have to put that in post.
Yeah.
"Fly Me to the Moon," in other words, by Hikaru Utada. But yeah, it's funny because it's like it starts out and sounds like a completely different song, like the lyrics are different, and then it just like works into Is it Kantono? No, that's the original one for. Anyways, I will. I'll figure it out and put it in post and then just like text you because I don't remember, because it's really cool because like I remember when I first listened to it, I didn't give it enough time and I was like, this is a completely different song. I don't know why they would title it this, but it is a different song in that it starts out completely different and her singing it, but then she's like, but all I have to say to you, and then like goes into Fly Me Into the Moon, so it becomes its own song but then works in the original lyrics and song. So it's pretty cool, and that's in the rebuild, which you said you hadn't watched the rebuilds, right?
I haven't seen them yet. Initially I had been reluctant to, because Jeff Bezos is the devil.
Yes.
But at this point I'm like, I don't care. I'm over it. I'm kind of over individual responsibility for like corporate malfeasance or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm
also one way you can go around it is just get someone who already is paying for Amazon Prime and use their login and watch it.
Yeah, totally.
And then you're not giving Bezos any more money. But yeah, I did watch them. I feel like I like I'll be interested we'll have to revisit it after you have seen it too, because I'll be interested in your take. But I feel like some people were saying that it was like even better than the original series, and I definitely personally I would not go that far. I do really like it. Like the first movie is kind of like sum up the story, and then it just like kind of goes in its own direction and its own kind of like, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's like it takes different directions with stuff, and I do think it's like very interesting. But there's something just like so good about the original series, like especially like for me, some of my favorite is like that last episode where it's like they're running out of money, but he still has so many ideas that he wants to kind of come up to address and everything. So it becomes way more psychological, and the animation becomes so much more minimal.
Yeah,
and I really like
that.
That look into Shinji's like headspace is really interesting. And then of course, if you want to see what's going on like outside, you can watch like End of Evangelion, and it sums it up. But
I would also advise watching the Death Squared, or however it's called, which is kind of also kind of an abridged summary of Evangelion, but the audio is different, and I'm trying to think of how to describe it. It's like it is abridged and reinterpreted. I think that part of the appeal of Evangelion is that there's not one thing about it that makes it so special. It's the combination of all of the very deliberate and specific attributes that it has that work together to create this sort of unified thesis, cruel thesis, if you would, to demonstrate sort of the point of the show. You know, it's kind of like when people are like, "Oh, I thought it was going to be about big robots, but it's about a lot of gay feelings instead."
Yeah, it's so funny that the big robots and the kind of I don't even know if you'd call it critique, but the kind of like homage to the Gundam series and everything become such like a background part of everything that's going on. Like it's very much like, you know, this coming of age story for Shinji, and then like all of the children like dealing with their trauma and being like forced to like keep getting into these like traumatic situations. And then and it is very tragic. Like what's the name of the angel's name that Shinji falls in love with?
Oh, fucking Kaworu. Oh god, sorry.
Yeah.
Speech impediment. Kaworu. Yeah. We all love our gay boy. I think that hang on, I lost my train of thought. Darn. Well, part of the thing that I really enjoy about Eva is that everybody is a main character. It's like third person limited in that we get to see everybody, but we mostly learn about what's happening inside Shinji's head. Although we might get like intimate moments and like times when Shinji isn't even in the room. And a lot of the context of the show exists as it relates to Shinji, because he's kind of the focal point of the narrative structure. But I don't know if it's fair to say that it's like about Shinji even, because Rei is such a huge part of the show, and like she like oh, I remember what I was going to say. Okay, I'll finish my thought. The show is so much about the different things that Shinji has to do and the different people that Shinji has to be and how hard that is for him. But at the same time, we have like people like Rei who are literally like 3 different people in the show, in addition to being split into 3 different souls in the show. So there's like 9 Reis, and Shinji just trying to deal with it. But as far as the Gundam thing, I had read that a big part of the design of the Evas was in opposition to Gundams, because Gundams come from this very like muscular, bulky, armored machine design philosophy, where they're supposed to be evocative of tanks and warships and machines of war, you know? Whereas the Evas were designed more to be more like feline and nubile, and to move in ways that were reminiscent of like gymnastics, but also very alien and kind of weird sometimes. So to see something like that, in addition to this very intimate emotional experience, makes it very visceral compared to Gundam, which is more of a war story, I would say.
All right. Hopefully you all are enjoying the episode so far. We are going to go ahead and play our first and only song of the night. This is a song from Neon Genesis Evangelion that I chopped and screwed and put on my new album, Sunshine Tapes Volume 2, which is available on Bandcamp. omniasol.art.bandcamp.com is where you can go buy it or download it, whatever you want to do. It's on Bandcamp. The song is called Opening Credits. So check it out. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll be back with the rest of the interview after the song. Well, not the rest of the interview because it's split into 2 parts, but the rest of this episode of the interview after this song.
風が今青い
Yeah, very much more organic, and you do, especially
Yeah.
the early designs with Gundam is like straight out of just like reminiscent and taking directly from like samurai like armor too. So it is, yeah, very much this like, even though it's like, you know, far off in the future with giant robots, it's repeating these motifs of war, of taking this armor of wartime and like applying it to a larger scale with robots, which is also why I think it's like so funny that like as a little kid watching Power Rangers, I know, because I didn't know what Super Sentai was, but had no idea that this was like Japanese footage, like despite the fact that the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers big robot looks like a samurai, like, you know, armor, but had no connection to like what I was actually watching.
I think another important distinction to make between Gundam and Eva is that in the Gundam series, I haven't seen all of it, but I actually recently started watching them because they're on Netflix too. It's two factions of humans fighting each other with the assistance of these machines that are, completely inorganic and aren't really sentient. They're just very technologically advanced, and that's like the cool thing about them. Whereas with Ava, it's people fighting against a completely unearthly opponent using people. I mean, Avas are people. Spoiler alert, Avas are people. And all of the technology it's like Frankenstein shit, It's about operating an organic thing and trying to control it as if it were a machine. But clearly that doesn't work out. So that difference between people using big robots to hurt each other versus people taking advantage of big people in order to try and scrape by is also a very different set of circumstances to start with.
The Frankenstein analogy is so good too, because it is like taking these different like parts from the angels to build these robots and to put this armor on it, but then also using the kids as the pilots of it. It's very much like it's using their brain, so it is like taking the the body parts to make this like Frankenstein monster. Like I hadn't even thought of it as like a kind of a retelling of Frankenstein, but that's so good.
Well, that's part of. I mean, I'm going to talk about Ray all the time because we stan Ray, but that's like her whole thing is that she feels replaceable because her entire existence is her being manufactured and her being treated as a piece of equipment, She's not humanized until she meets Shinji. People don't care to empathize with her or develop her as a person, except Gendo, but he's also having sex with her, so who knows. And to Zile and Nerve, and even Gehin, which is I think is how it's pronounced. I'm sorry if it's not, which is before Nerve. It was about exactly that, like taking from Adam and taking from Lilith and being very irresponsible with that out of arrogance and out of greed and aspirations for power and like lust, which is very much in line with that Frankenstein like arrogance of humanity to think that we could control such power. And
I think it was in Caliban and the Witch. By Sylvia Federici, where like she talks about Frankenstein, the novel, and the inspiration for the novel, how like during I guess was it the Middle Ages, like during the scientific revolution, there was so much like
it was the Enlightenment era was after. It was like
Enlightenment, with like body stealing and like scientific, and it was specifically like working class, bodies were like the ones that were like not respected and like dug up and used for experiments, and that's where like the story of like Frankenstein comes out of, is this complete like disrespect for other classes of bodies after they had passed, and during life and then after.
I think that's
it's interesting.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say it's interesting too, just like with Evangelion, where it's like children have, are the like this class of people that like they don't have, rights or like autonomy to. So like these government adults, like Shinji's literal father is like, being like, I'm going to pretend to like even acknowledge you because I want something out of you. I want you to like serve my higher purpose of like fighting these angels.
Yeah. I think if we even look at the control center of Nerve, where we have Gendo and Fuyutsuki on that upper platform, sort of looking down at everything, often disapprovingly, or at the very least unempathetically, it starts to paint him as as a user, as a person who commands other people to sacrifice on his behalf. And I think that is part of what makes it so meaningful when they lose power in that one episode. And Gendo is like right there, like pulling the ropes to get everything set in place for the Evas. Sort of demonstrating that Gendo is also capable of doing what needs to be done and like putting his money where his mouth is. But it definitely still begs the question of like what the hell was it like to feel like if you didn't do something because or if you weren't willing to make these sacrifices, you were responsible for like the world ending. But at the same time, like, you were being asked for these, like, horrible, terrible sacrifices. I mean, Toji wanted to, like, fuck up Shinji because he almost lost his sister. But then he was asked to be a pilot, and he did it. You know, and he didn't feel good about it, but there wasn't a question because he understood that that was what needed to be done. And it really demonstrates how people in power can withhold information and distribute it as needed to convince people to act as pawns in their little schemes without having the whole story. Nobody knew that fucking Gendo was just doing this so that he could be with his wife again.
Yeah.
I guess Fuyutsuki knew, but...
Yeah, and even like just the exploitation of like trauma, even going to like all the way to like Misoto of her, you know, the whole reason is she's fighting is because she like lost her father, and so it's like that's like why she sees so much like in Shinji, because she sees her own story in Shinji of like trying to like literally fight for he's literally trying to fight for his like father's like love and approval. And then she's trying, it's for her, it's like very much about like regret and grief and also like this like legacy too of like, and revenge too, you know, wanting revenge on the angels.
So. Yeah, and it's also interesting to think about the actual power structure of Nerve and Zile, how women are high ranking, like Dr. Akagi, both Ritsuko and her mother were both like the head of computer engineers, and Misato is like the head of the operations, I suppose. But the actual power structures of like who is calling the overall shots and who is distributing power is very much held by men. So there's like this might be a bit of a stretch, but I think that it kind of demonstrates that idea of like patriarchy and matriarchy in the relationships that people have, because the men are creating these just fucking nightmarish circumstances and are exploiting women in order to make it possible and in order to motivate other people to go along with it, because they trust people like Ritsuko and Misato to be the faces of the endeavors, even if Fuyutsuki and Gendo are not so trustworthy themselves.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the directors or creators' like opinion of the fans in general? Because I do like there's certain parts like watching the, I don't know if the Netflix series just goes episode to episode or if it has like the previews for the episode, but on the tapes it's like so good because the previews for the next episode that, you know, kind of tells you what you're going to watch. There's such like a tiny critique of just like anime in general where Misoto is narrating everything, and she ends every preview by saying, and much more fan service. And it's like such a good like, it's such a good like running bit. And then you have the end of Evangelion where you have this like long, very like surreal scene where it just like, it reminds me of Society of the Spectacle a little bit, because it's like just the camera just like zooming in and out of the fans like watching the movie in the movie theater. And just like, while the I guess, is it the third or fourth impact at that point?
It's the third. So
at the third impact, you know, you have all this like death and destruction and rebirth and everything happening. And then there's just this like very surreal scene where the animation like cuts out and it's just like layered on top of layer of just like the fans sitting in seats. And it's like, to me, I kind of interpret it as this sort of like Brechtian like epic theater moment of like or like in like Godard when like the music would just like, and I know like even like Tarantino has like done it too, but I feel like he does it more as an homage and not as like the actual like kind of philosophy behind it of trying to like break you out of the fact that you're watching a play or a movie and to make you like think of yourself as the spectator and everything. I don't know. I'm curious your thoughts on it.
Yeah. Well, I think a big part of Evangelion is definitely a little tongue-in-cheek of like, look how cool these robots are. Just kidding. It's actually about how you have value as a person and how you can't let yourself get lost in the sauce and get distracted from the things that really matter in life. So yeah, there's a lot of fan service in Eva, and it is unfortunate, especially since there's a lot of underage women in the show. But yeah, this is great because now I can talk about Asuka. Asuka's whole thing is that she wants to be seen, and I myself have learned that a very easy way to gain validation as a feminine person is to sexualize yourself. And we can see her like literally begging Kaji for to be physical with her because she thinks that it will give her that feeling of being seen and being loved that she wants. But it wouldn't have. And it was really good that Kaji didn't do that. So all of the, I don't know, on the one hand, like, I think that the fan service is there unironically because people are horny and they're bastards. But I also think that it was an intentional way of reminding people that people have like bodies and they're you might be tempted to want to exploit them and take advantage of that. Or you might be like Shinji, where you're very curious, but you're very shy. And all of that dehumanizes people. And if you're like thinking about Asuka's titties and you're kind of missing the point of what the hell she's there for, you know, the waifu stuff is like, it's so far from the point that it's part of the point.
Yeah, and I've talked to friends about it who have just like been disinterested in even checking out the series because they see like Twitter and or like whatever social media and see this like hypersexualization that exists in like a lot of just like media in general. Like people try to like say it's like all anime and it's like, no, like there's a whole industry of teen dramas that are like people pushing 40 playing teenagers, you know? But like with that too, like a lot of like the sexuality in the show, at least from like when I watch it, it seems like a lot of it, not so much Asuka, but like with Shinji, for instance, it'll be like there will be sexualization, but it's from like his perspective of like of him like coming of age and like going through puberty and like having
these, very
like,
adolescent.
Yeah, and it's interesting too how it's like these like very just like coming of age hormonal like urges, emotions, rage, all like then gets wrapped up into this like bigger cosmic level of like you're gonna have these, you know, these preteens or teenagers like pilot these giant robots. And like you do say what there's the scene where it's like the berserk mode or whatever, is it berserk
yeah
or something?
Berserk,
where it's like
sure.
Gone berserk, where it just like gets out of control, and then the more like base animalistic like kind of just rage destruction brain like takes over, and the kind of living being of the Eva kind of like takes over and has more control than the more what we consider human of the pilot.
Yeah. if we look at the difference between the way that Rei and Asuka interact with Shinji, and how that kind of affects their relationships, Asuka is initially like suspicious of Shinji and competitive, but when she is struggling to gain his favor by demonstrating how badass she is, and it's not really working because he's not really impressed by that. But at the same time, she sees how easily him and Rei can be together. It starts to bother her because that's what she wants. Like, she wants closeness with Shinji, but she can't get it. And so she becomes more resentful of Rei, which is really bad, and that really fucks everything up, honestly. And she becomes more resentful of herself. So these social failures start to snowball into performance failures and technical failures and stuff like that. That inability to express yourself for what you actually want, and that desire to curate a personhood and expect the world to pivot around that is kind of Asuka's whole thing, and why she is kind of screwed from the beginning. But to go back to the initial question that led us here about that section where we're seeing the audience in the theater, all the characters in Evangelion are so hyperbolized and exaggerated that it can get really easy to get lost in the sauce, and you're like, oh, I'm watching anime. So it's really nice that we get this reminder that we're all people at the end of the day, and even though we might relate to these characters who are hyperbolized and exaggerated and sort of simplified, we all have those aspects of insecurity and personal failures and fears about our relationships with people, but we have the lovely advantage that we don't have to deal with that when we're fighting with interdimensional angel creatures. So it kind of begs the question of, like, as an audience member, like, now that you've learned that you should just be yourself, what are you going to do with that information? Since you're not going to be busy fighting angels and stuff, how are you going to apply the things that you've learned from watching Eva and learning about how all these people are interacting? How are you going to apply that to your own life and try to be a more authentic person, or be more understanding with people, or be more forgiving to yourself when you're feeling like you're a failure, you know?
All right. Thank you all so much for watching, for tuning in to the Omnia Sol Art Show. That was the end of the first half of my interview with Samantha about Neon Genesis Evangelion. Tune in next week for the second half. And if you are a Patreon patron at patreon.com/omniasol.art, I will try to get this episode out and uploaded to you before anyone else. You can see it if you're a Patreon patron. So if you want to support the show financially, patreon.com/omniasol.art. Like and subscribe on YouTube, etc. New album, Sunshine Tapes Volume 2 on Bandcamp, omniasol.art.bandcamp.com. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Samantha for being on the show, and we will see you next week. Unless, of course, you are a Patreon patron, in which case we will see you in maybe a day, depending on how long it takes part 2 of the episode to upload. But anyways, take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and other worlds hold my hand. In other words, darling,
Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words,